the truth.
Okay. I got truth on my mind. Truth on my mind. I got truth on my mind. Truth on my mind. I got truth on my mind. Truth on my mind.
Hey, listen, you are now rocking with Mickey Truth. She live up to her name, not the fame. So make sure y'all subscribe to her channel and stay updated on what's real. Bye.
Good reporting ass Mickey.
We love you, Mickey.
Mickey talks.
Make sure you like, comment, share, subscribe. Tell a friend to pull up on your girl, Mickey Truth. We is live with it. Good morning, everybody. We are here again. Good morning, Envy. All right, so this morning gonna be a little different, okay? Because y'all know I was supposed to be on at 8:45. I was not. So I'm an hour late. I don't even think the YSL trial started up, but we're gonna catch up on some things from the past couple days. However, I will be ending this live, okay, close to 11 a.m. because I'm going to stream Rich Homie Quan's Celebration of Life, okay? So this won't be a long live, but I do need to play some type of catch up with the YSL trial. That's why I decided to just go ahead and go live now. But I will be ending this live and going to the Rich Homie Quan live. Now, with the Rich Homie Quan live, that will not be a vertical live, okay? That will be a regular live, so it'll be regular full in your screen, just FYI. So if you find my lives, or if you catch my lives through the vertical stream, the short stream feed, you're going to have to come to my page and actually click on the live, because I'm not doing a vertical live for the Rich Homie Quan Celebration of Life, okay? So that's what's going on. So that's going to be closer to 11. I'll probably stop about maybe like 10:50 or whatever, just so that we can start from the beginning. I am so upset that I could not go in person. It was so much stuff going on yesterday. I've been up since about 2 o'clock this morning trying to make maneuvers, and it just didn't work out. So I'm hopefully, okay, my car is ready, because I was supposed to be there at 7, because that's what ticket I had. But anyway, my car is ready so I can go to the repass, but I don't even know if it's going to be ready by then. They talking about engine shit and all that. And they just came and got us. I don't know. But nevertheless, I'm going to just do with what's going on. You got to be able to pivot in these times. So we'll just do it virtually, okay? But yeah, that's where we are right now. Let me check in with the YSL trial. I don't believe they're doing nothing right now. A lot has been transpiring over there in the YSL trial, okay? So more clarity has came out in regards to Lil D situation, okay? Last night I was listening to Infamous Sylvia, who is actually in the courtroom, because I wanted to find out if she knew more about when the cameras went off, okay? But since they're not ready, we'll just go ahead and excuse me, we'll just go ahead and kind of like play catch up with it. So let me find a video, because his lawyer appeared. Y'all know I was traveling yesterday. The crazy part, went all the way to Charleston and back before my car went out. It was wild. But anyway, luckily I made it back home and didn't have to get it towed from Charleston. But nevertheless, let me see. All right, yeah, let's watch this. No, okay. All right, pop. So I don't know if y'all caught this. Shout out to Megan Cuffnell. She does a pretty good job with clipping everything. So Quan, what's up? Nikki, good morning. Y'all, today is Rich Homie Quan's Celebration of Life. Y'all know, as a big Rich Homie Quan fan, definitely I wanted today to be fully about him. But it will, we'll transition into his live. But yes, y'all, I don't even know why they're not even I don't even know what the fuck is going on with the trial today. But let's look at this clip real quick in regards to Lil D, and then we'll go from there.
All right, what's your name? Okay, I'm sorry, I hadn't seen you in a while. You look familiar to me, but
Everybody thinks I'm Denver.
okay. Are you?
Look, the judge didn't find out humor funny. He said, everybody think I'm dead, but I'm not. And the other time I asked about they giggling.
You asking to approach without the defense?
No, they can say, that's fine, that's one from the record. I'm representing Mr. Zachary, and I understand he was picked up on material witness. I would ask the court to release him. He's had sickle cell bad. When he was picked up, he just exited the hospital. They had to do 2 blood replacements, transfusions. He's in the hospital, or he's in Brady right now. That Brady, he's in Fulton County Jail. He's got pneumonia. He will not live, Judge. I talked to the family. In the last 4 months, he's been 10 out of the hospital 10 times. He's extremely sick. He will not survive in Fulton County. I would ask that he be released, and I'm going to be in touch with him. He will come to court when you ask him to come to court.
Go ahead.
If not, he won't live.
All right, so the information I got this morning, and y'all, this was actually what I wanted to discuss on the record. Had we, at the bench conference, had we gotten started at 8:45, like I asked for us to get started. So anyway.
This one I knew it was some bullshit coming, okay? But good morning, everybody. Good morning, Latrice. Good morning, Breeze. Okay, 8:43 in here. Good morning, Haitian. I think the trial has started. So hold on. I'm gonna segue into them real quick.
All right.
Hold on, let me finish my thought. They had us waiting this whole time. So okay. Good morning, bosses. Good morning, Alabama hitter. So listen, they already with the foolery this morning, okay? But to segue back into that clip. So from my understanding, I was going through, Twitter, listening to Infamous Sylvia. Basically they saying that the prosecution lied to the judge and made it seem like Quindarius Zachary wasn't trying to respond to them, and they needed to do a material witness warrant, which the judge signed off on. Like, she actually signed off on it based on the information, that was provided to her. And if y'all remember, shout out to Thugger Daily. Thugger Daily pulled up this clip, and then we'll get into the trial now, where this is what Love said.
For a person who's not trying to be secured, but who is under subpoena.
Okay.
And
do you have?
I don't believe shit she say. So this is the order for material witness signed by the Judge Whitaker. So again, and it said, having considered this motion, it is ordered. So, like I said, it just shows how unprepared they are for this case, how they're really not trying to put in the work for it, because you already know that man was sick. The man been sick for years, way before this Rico anyway. Like, you even said the man was in the hospital the last time you and still had a conversation about it in open court. Love just irritates my soul, my back, my everything, okay? But nevertheless, according to what they said, they did have him placed back into the hospital. I believe he is still in custody, though. Like I told y'all before, I do think they're going to try to force immunity him, because I told y'all when they gave him the subpoena, he refused to sign the subpoena. So I did say I felt like he was going to definitely be one of those witnesses. But yeah, to my understanding, what I gathered from listening to Infamous Sylvia, his family has said he's going to plead the fifth. So you know how they feel about 2015 videos they want in so bad. They're definitely going to force immunity him, okay? Will he be able, because pneumonia, I don't know how many people have relatives or whatever with sickle cell anemia. And when they have their moments, that's a lot going on. They're in a lot of pain. I have some people I grew up with it. You're born with it. It's not some shit that you can just say, oh, I just caught. You born with it. So I just think it's just obviously they don't have a lot going on if they have to force, what I'm saying, this man to do something. Did Lil D take a plea deal as well? No, he was never charged in this Rico. So Lil D, Quindarius Zachary, was never charged in this Rico. The other Lil D, the Mikion Garlington, is on this case, but Lil D does not have a plea deal in this case. Just like Woody, he does not have a plea deal in this case. He never was charged in this case. He was a part of the crime that Moontoon and the other Lil D did. That's about it. Okay. And on that warrant, he says, they says what he's important to. Hold on, let me see. It says here, Mr. Zachary is necessary and material witness regarding testimony related to count 1 Rico Acts 16 through 20, 39 through 47, count 2 murder. Mr. Zachary received an in-person admission by defendant Stillwell and Kendrick to the murder and of the facts and circumstance before, during, and after its commission. Furthermore, Mr. Zachary has personal information related to his participation in the April 28, 2015 retaliatory shooting related to count 1, Acts 41 through 46, okay, which is the one that included the house that, the witness that just was on the stand. Let me see here. What the other day was saying? Said also, this issue was brought up by actual lawyers first, but the statute the state cited does not seem to me to apply here. I don't know what the rules for material witness warrant are, but this looks like it applies to someone who actually failed to appear, not potentially. And see, that's the thing. It's a segue though, because if she misguided the judge by saying he did not want to be like one thing, you got to be in communication with them. You got to do this, you got to do that. And they didn't have to arrest him. They didn't have to do that. I mean, they didn't even ask him for court yet. They have resources. They could have contacted the hospital, but nevertheless, we already know. I'm gonna say this, okay? This is definitely my opinion, okay? DA Love is evil as fuck, and I'm gonna say it, she's evil, okay? And this goes beyond the scope of just being a great prosecutor or wanting to seek quote unquote justice. She's evil as fuck. She's manipulative, just like the same witnesses she's putting on the stand. She's a liar, okay? And this would not be that. This definitely will come back to bite her ass, okay? Because this is, again, those who say, oh, it's just a gang member, whatever, it could have been your grandma going through the same thing. If she'll do it to one, she'll do it to all. Don't get it twisted. Grammy, what's up? So I don't care for her. I haven't cared for her since she tried to sway in there that Moontoon did a proffer when he did. She's full of shit, okay? The judge should see she's full of shit because she comes in there never prepared but always got something to say, okay? She shouldn't go no higher up the food chain than she is. I heard rumors of her running for DA of a county. They need her ass, for one, her ass needs to sit down somewhere. I wouldn't want her to breathe on their freaking case ever. Because she's full of it. All right. So with that being said, let's go into the YSL case because, like I said, today is Rich Homie Quan Celebration of Life. That's what our focus is going to be on once it begins. So again, before we get started, like I told y'all, this live will be short. Once the celebration of life begins, which is 11 a.m. Eastern time, I will end this live and we will go to the Rich Homie Quan live. For those who watch me in a vertical and short feeds, you will have to come directly to my page because that live will not be vertical. It will be a regular live so that it fills up your screen. So definitely just follow closer to that time I put the link. Just follow us over there. We won't be in the short stream. Okay. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started and see what bullshit Love got going on. I'm going to start from the beginning. We probably missed a few minutes of it, but hell, they had us waiting over an hour. So let's go. I'm trying to skip that because I don't want to just hear that noise. Okay, they got a new witness.
Detective J. Thorpe Jr., Thorpe,
Okay, so is this, hold on.
Jim.
So this is the one with the squirrel brain, Detective Thorpe. Was that the one that Woody said was a squirrel brain? I can't remember. Shit, he said so much.
Good morning, Detective Thorpe.
Good morning, ma'am.
How are you?
Fine.
Good. Detective Thorpe, would you please introduce yourself to the jury by telling them where it is you currently work?
Yes, ma'am. Detective Jim Thorpe Jr., City of Atlanta.
Hang on just a second. You're gonna have to use the mic, Miss Love. Can you hear the witness?
Yes.
All right.
All right, if everyone can hear me and can stand the static, I'm going to use this
Thank
one.
you.
Thank you. Would you, go ahead, I apologize. Tell the jury where it is that you currently work.
Yes, ma'am. I currently work City of Atlanta Police Department Homicide Unit.
How long have you worked at the City of Atlanta Police Department in the homicide unit?
I work with the City of Atlanta now for 30 years and 9 months.
All right. Have you worked as a homicide detective the entire time?
Yes, ma'am, 20 years.
Now, 30 years and 9 months and 20 years are different. So what did you do when you first started working with the Atlanta Police Department?
My first assignment,
They cannot hear you if you don't use the mic, and I'm sorry that it's staticky. Maybe one day we could get that fixed also, but we're just gonna have to endure the static.
Yes, Your Honor. Try to minimize it. What did you do when you first started working with the Atlanta Police Department?
yes, ma'am. The first assignment was the Atlanta Police Zone 3 Precinct Evening Watch Mobile Patrol.
That would have been in what year that you started that?
I started Mobile Patrol in 95.
What types of activities did you conduct as a Zone 3 Evening Watch Mobile Patrol officer?
Answering 911 calls, dealing with all types of calls of accidents, suspicious persons, shootings, robberies, burglaries, car thefts.
Okay. There we go.
Yes, ma'am.
And tell the jury what parts of Zone 3 you patrolled as a patrolman in Zone 3 Evening Watch.
Then the beat I was assigned was called 304, and that beat was mostly around Metropolitan Parkway, Sylvan Road, leading up to Cleveland Avenue and Lakewood Avenue.
How much of Cleveland Avenue did you patrol?
It would depend on if we were short an officer, they would reposition my team. It was 2 officers assigned to the beat 304. So either one of us could get pulled, and usually around Cleveland Avenue, that was the 308 beat. And we pretty much control all of Cleveland, 75, 85, north and south, Jonesboro Road, and all the streets surrounding Old Hayville and streets like that.
Okay. As a homicide detective, are you restricted to one zone only, or do you work the entire city of Atlanta?
We work the entire city of Atlanta.
Are you familiar with the neighborhood surrounding Cleveland Avenue and including Cleveland Avenue today?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell the jury whether it's different, the same, or in some ways both to 95 as between today and then?
Sustained.
All right. How do you describe the neighborhood of Cleveland Avenue back in 1995? How would you describe it in terms of the community?
Community, like a better terminology, wasn't aggressive. That part of the Cleveland Avenue really was not a high crime area or gang activity respondent back in 95 to 97.
And that was the length of time that you worked evening patrol, 95 to 97?
Yes, ma'am.
And typically, what types of crimes did you have the most opportunity to respond to in that area?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance.
Overruled.
Mostly shootings, like I said, robberies, burglaries, things of that nature.
Would you describe for the jury your you mentioned there was not a lot of particular kind of activity. Did that change? Has that changed today?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a particular kind of crime that you see more of today that you did not see back in 95?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you tell the jury what types those are?
Mostly gang activity shootings, related shootings.
Now, after you left evening watch patrol of Zone 3, what station did you take up at APD?
Yes, ma'am. I was transferred to the Red Dog unit, evening watch and day watch.
How long did you work the Red Dog unit?
About 3 to 4 years.
Now, after the Red Dog unit, what was your assignment?
I was promoted from the Red Dog unit to a detective, and my first assignment was the burglary unit.
And what year was that?
2000. About 2000, yes, ma'am.
Prior to joining the Atlanta Police Department, would you tell the jury what your education was?
Yes, ma'am. Graduated high school on time, associate's degree, and at that time I went into the military, U.S. Army.
How long did you serve in the Army?
Roughly about 6 years.
And what was your station? What was your job in the Army? Without getting into too much detail, just generally speaking.
Soldier.
Okay. Are you originally from Atlanta?
No, ma'am.
Did you come to Atlanta after you left the Army?
No, ma'am. I was here.
Okay. After you joined the burglary unit, tell the jury what your responsibilities included.
Investigating burglaries, whether it was commercial or residential burglaries.
Was there a particular area of Atlanta you were responsible for?
Yes, ma'am. My primary zone was the Zone 1, and my secondary was Zone 3.
What area of Zone 1 were you responsible for? I'm sorry about that static.
That's fine. We believe if anyone's familiar with the Bluff area, Donnelly, Hollowell, Hollywood Road, everything over in that generally Perry Boulevard.
Hang on one second. I'm trying to solve this problem. That's pretty constant. Sorry about that. And how long did you serve in the burglary unit?
2 years.
After the burglary unit, what did you do?
I was transferred to the robbery unit.
Is that me, Judge, or is that?
I have no idea.
All right, after the, what was your position with the robbery unit?
Detective, and my primary zone was Zone 3. The secondary zone was Zone 1.
Were you patrolling the same or responsible for the same area in the robbery unit as you had been when you were in a Zone 3 evening watch patrol officer?
Yes, ma'am. Except I had the whole entire zone.
Okay.
I mean, yes, the whole entire zone, A sector and B sector.
Did you interact often with the residents of Zone 3?
Yes.
During your time as a patrol officer and as a detective in the robbery unit?
Yes, ma'am.
Was your interaction only when you were arresting people or investigating suspects?
No, ma'am.
What other types of interactions did you have?
At that time, I was also working a part-time as an Atlanta Public School resource officer. And the school I was assigned was the Crawford Long Middle School, which is right off of Cleveland Avenue.
Would you tell the jury what years those were that you worked as a Crawford Long Middle School resource officer?
I would say it'd be from 2001 to 2012, 2013.
And what were your responsibilities as a resource officer with Crawford Long?
Primarily maintaining the safety and security of the school, walking around, patrolling the grounds, make sure the teachers' cars or anyone visiting school wasn't cars were getting broken in, things of that nature.
Did you have interaction with the students outside of investigating car break-ins and the like?
Yes, ma'am.
And would you describe for the jury what types of interactions that you'd have with the students at Crawford Long Middle School? Your Honor, as it pertains to particular people that are involved in this case, his knowledge of them and the jury's awareness of his foundation.
His attention to that.
Did you interact with with the course indulgence, I'd just like to ask a broader question and narrow it down. I won't prolong that. Did you interact with the students and converse with them on a personal level?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you interact with the students' parents at times?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you interact with a student by the name of Quindarius Zachary?
Yes, ma'am.
Describe your, when you first met Quindarius Zachary, how old was he?
I say he had to be about 11 years old.
And in what capacity did you interact with him? Was it?
Usually times when he was misbehaving, and I would just take him to the side and talk to him rather than seeing him being suspended or suffering school punishment. I'd try and talk the kids to the side, get them out of trouble, and once again, put them back into the classroom.
What year was that you got to meet Quindarius Zachary?
Can I recall right offhand? Probably around 2010, maybe.
Did you establish any level of trust with the students? Would they come to you and talk with you about things that they were encountering?
Yes, ma'am.
As students?
Yes, ma'am.
And when you say you talked to them, did you talk with them only about scholastic things, or did you talk with them about things like getting involved with groups that they shouldn't get involved with?
Yes, ma'am. All of the above.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Back then in 2010, did you see any signs of what you believe to be the formation of gang activity within Crawford Long?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, what was it that you saw that led you to believe that?
The kids was constantly discussing the gang that was starting to sprout. They was calling themselves the Red Cartel.
No, I heard you, and it looks like Mr. Short's also about to say something.
Same objection.
Thing. Overruled.
You may continue.
Yes, they would say something about a gang sprouting up called the Red Cartel.
You may continue.
Okay. They call themselves the Red Cartel, and they was becoming very prominent over in the Cleveland, Springdale, Cleveland Avenue area, Old Hateville area, Macon Drive area.
Apart from hearing the name Red Cartel, did you see any indicators or signs of the ways that people calling themselves Red Cartel identify themselves?
They would mostly wear the color red.
Did you ever see them, without specifically showing any gang signs, did you ever see them display any signals that were seemingly unique to members of the group itself?
No.
I'm going to object to this line of questioning. I don't believe that there's a proper foundation for this witness.
Your Honor,
Is this the first time this witness has testified?
yes.
Okay, you need to lay a foundation.
Okay.
Sustained.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. When you started out as a school resource officer at Crawford Long Middle School, would you describe for the jury what type of training that you had with the Atlanta Police Department?
I had basic academy training along with interviews, interrogation training, also burglary and robbery. And later during that tenure, I was transferred to the homicide unit, which I received numerous homicide classes and training.
What training or experience did you have that caused you to form or to believe that you recognized gang activity when you saw it at Crawford Long Middle School?
Basically just growing up. I was prominent in Chicago.
You're from Chicago?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. What part of Chicago?
South Side.
Now, what did you see growing up that caused you to believe that what you were looking at Crawford Long were signs of gang activity?
It was the same standard. Kids would wear like red bandanas or clothing of red, some article on them with red. Usually the red bandana, we called it flagging. Show people who you represented. At that time, once I received that information, I notified the gang unit.
Your
And
Honor,
that,
Yes, sir.
I'm going to object to relevance, lack of foundation, and this line of questioning, I don't believe is going to lay a foundation. So that's why I'm saying relevance as well.
Okay, overruled.
Thank you. You may continue. Please speak to the jury.
okay. At that time, I notified the Atlanta Police Gang Unit, and they confirmed that, that it was.
Sustained.
Without speaking specifically
Okay.
about confirmation in particular instances, more broadly speaking, when you did see things that you believe were gang activity, did you notify the gang unit?
Yes, I did, ma'am.
Why did you do that?
Just to alert them and to get more information for myself.
In talking with the kids at Crawford Long Middle School, did they confide in you about their involvement in, for instance, groups like Red Cartel? I'm not asking what they said.
Sustained.
Okay. Without speaking specifically about what they said, what types of things beyond what you've already testified about did you gather from the students that allowed you to help them navigate?
Objection, hearsay.
Sustained.
How often did you talk with students' parents?
Usually when they come to pick up the kids or student got in trouble.
And when you saw things that concerned you that you alerted the gang unit about, did you ever talk to the students' parents about those same things?
Overruled.
You may tell the jury.
The parents that were receptive of listening, there were some that wanted to hear, and there were some that didn't want to hear.
Did you ever speak with groups of students, or was it just individual ones about trying to stay out of or trying to avoid particular pitfalls? Your Honor, I am.
Overruled.
You can continue.
Yes, I would talk to them in a group or talk to them individually.
And were the subjects of the conversation always how to stay out of trouble?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you share with the students the information that you had from growing up or other sources about gang activity?
Sustained.
In what ways, beyond talking to the students, did you attempt to keep students from being involved in gangs?
Sustained.
Did the information that you were able to gather from the students in any way inform your investigations and ability to get information about criminal investigations later on as a detective?
Yes, ma'am.
How?
I developed rapport with several of the kids. A trust was formed, and they would, if they see me out on the scene, anywhere near that, they'll come to me next day in school and say, "Hey, officer."
Generally speaking,
Yes,
they would come to you and would they offer you information?
yes, ma'am.
Other than Quindarius Zachary, were you familiar with any other persons that, through your investigation in this case, that you came in contact with?
Yes, ma'am.
Who were you familiar with during your time as a school resource officer?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to object under 404A.
What's your response?
She don't have one like always. She can't think of her goddamn toes. I can't stand Miss Love. I ain't gonna lie, y'all. Y'all can call that bias. At this point, she can't do no right to me.
Your Honor, I'm not certain what exactly
We know.
Maybe tailor your question.
okay.
She just irritates me.
What other persons did you know during your time as a school resource officer that you also interacted with or taught or
And
gained knowledge about during this case?
Same objection, Your Honor.
Do you understand the objection? Can you tailor your?
she don't understand, Judge.
Did you know any other Trontavia Stevens? Did you know Trontavia Stevens?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What age did you learn about or did you meet Trontavia Stevens?
At age 11.
Was he a student as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Was he a student at Crawford Long Middle School?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you know Shannon Stillwell as a young person?
No, I did not know Shannon Stillwell.
Did you know Diamante Kendricks?
I knew of him. I never had any interaction with him.
Did you know of him as a young child?
Yes, I think as he was getting to high school, yes.
What about Quentin Porter? Did you know of him?
Yes, ma'am.
And was he a young child or was he an older person when you got to know him or
Uh,
knew of him?
I believe I met him when he was in 7th or 8th grade.
Okay. Of the people that you've named so far that you met, did you interact with them in the same way that you did with Quindarius Zachary, or did they not talk with you as much?
They talked with me, but that was about it. They talked, but they never.
Okay. All right. What year was it that you
Hold
were
on.
promoted
Hold
to?
on, just real quick. Now, how he said he knew of Diamante Kendricks, but he just said in his response, "Oh, they talked to me." But how? You were supposed to say, "Well, everybody except Diamante Kendricks," because I never actually talked to him. See, that's what I'm saying. Like this shit they be sliding shit, condensing shit all together.
A homicide detective.
2004.
And during your time as a homicide detective, have you been recognized or given any special awards for your work as a homicide detective?
Yes, ma'am.
Objection, Your
Tell
Honor,
the ju-
relevance.
Sustained.
Would you tell the jury how many homicides you've investigated during your time as a homicide detective?
Close to over maybe as lead and assistant, probably close to 300, maybe more than that.
How many you saw?
Now, were all of these within the city of Atlanta, or did you ever have an occasion to interact with or investigate crimes that were outside the city of Atlanta but connected with crimes that you were investigating in the city of Atlanta?
Yes, part of Atlanta is also in DeKalb County, so I worked some cases that was Atlanta, DeKalb County, and also Atlanta, Fulton County.
Would you describe for the jury some of the training that you received as a homicide detective that allowed you to perform your duties, that was different than the training you received as a patrol officer or a burglary detective?
Yes, interviews and interrogations, reading crime scenes, logging things, crime scene processing.
And as a homicide detective, were you involved in investigations that related to purported gang activity?
I'll repeat that again, ma'am.
As a homicide detective, did your investigations ever involve gang activity, the
Yes.
homicide investigation?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, did you share information with other law enforcement officers as it related to gang-related homicides?
Yes, ma'am.
And how, if ever you were trained to recognize gang activity while you were performing your investigations, what kind of training have you received?
It was the processing of the scene, doing thorough background checks on the victim or witnesses, finding out different
You
incidents
ain't
may have
thoroughly
happened at the
did
location
shit.
prior to the homicide incident.
Did your rapport with community members aid you in furthering your investigations as it related to potential
Objection, Your Honor,
gang
leading.
homicides?
Objection, what?
Leading.
Sustained.
What about your interactions with the community, if anything, helped you learn more when you were investigating gang-related homicides?
Yes, I would go talk to people that lived in the area of the incident. And at that time, I take them to the side and have a low-key conversation with them, and they'll advise me of, well, this is what they've been hearing, or this is what they know.
Did you always identify the people who gave you information as witnesses, Or were there times when people gave you information and didn't want to be identified?
Correct. There's several times people want to give information, but didn't want to get involved any further than that.
And did you respect their wishes not to be involved, or did you list them and sort of out them as having given you information?
No, I respect their wishes.
Okay. Would you tell the jury, as a homicide detective, how it is that you come to be assigned to any particular homicide?
What we have in Atlanta Police Homicide Unit is called a unit rotation. So it doesn't matter if you work one of the other shifts, day watch, which is 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., or evening watch, which is 2 to 12 midnight. It's kind of like a pitcher rotation in baseball. If you catch a case today, you're not due to catch a case until you come back up. So say there's 30 detectives. If you're number one, you go down to number 30. Number two becomes number one. Number three comes number two, and it goes like that. So it doesn't matter if you're off or it's past your shift time. If the call comes up, you have to come in and respond to it.
And during the time that you're not up, is that the time that you're able to investigate whatever homicides that you do catch on your rotation?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. When you arrive on a scene of a homicide, are there any particular steps that you take to jumpstart your investigation?
Upon arriving, I try and brief with the first responding officers and first responding detective on the scene, see what information he or she has gathered prior to my arrival.
Is it your practice? Has it been your practice to attempt to identify witnesses on scene if there are any?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it your practice to identify or attempt to identify surveillance footage if there is any?
Yes, ma'am.
How do you go about determining whether or not there is surveillance footage at a particular location?
We walk around and you try and see if there's cameras fixated on the structures, or you go inside and see if there's door ring cameras on some of the residents, or you go inside the business and see if they have a camera that may be facing out their front windows.
As the lead detective, do you delegate responsibilities in the investigation of the homicides that you're responsible for, or do you handle every aspect of that investigation?
We delegate.
What types of activities do you delegate to other persons?
Depending on how many homicide detectives on the scene, I have them do what is called a neighborhood canvas. They automatically go around, start knocking and talking to people, and also looking for surveillance cameras, things of that nature.
And do you work with the VIC unit to determine whether or not there are? Do you ever work with the VIC unit?
Yes.
And how long have you worked with the VIC unit?
Since their first inception and coming into work with the APD, we usually call down and ask them, do they have any VIC cameras in the immediate area? And they're able to tell us they have cameras at this location, either facing north, east, south, or west. At that time, we give them the time frame of the incident, and they're able to go back and take a look and see exactly if they have any footage of anything that may be relevant to our homicide investigation.
Has the number of VIC cameras remained constant over the time that you've worked as a homicide detective?
No, ma'am.
Would you explain how they've not remained constant? Have they increased, decreased?
They're increased because of the success of the video integration camera systems.
Because of the what now?
Video integration camera system that is increased because of their reliability.
Okay. Would you explain to the jury whether license plate readers and VIC cameras are the same or different?
They're different. The license plate reader picks up on a tag of a vehicle, stores it in, as they would tell you exactly which direction that vehicle has been traveling, what other LPR readers it has hit on. So you can go back and backtrack to see exactly where that vehicle may have started or came from.
Is there any particular information you need to be able to track a vehicle with license plate readers?
Sometimes we're able to give a make and model and description of the vehicle. And once again, the LPR teams are able to go in and say, okay, we found this vehicle that looks like the vehicle you're talking about. We see that the license plate reader is
since that time that you're familiar with remain constant, increased, decreased, or something in the middle?
increased.
And how do you know how it's determined where a license plate reader will be placed?
No, I tend to think that it's based on the high activity of traffic or whatever in that particular area, and also the crimes that may occur in that area.
And does the Atlanta Police Department decide where license plate readers will be placed?
I believe it's decided by City Hall and the police department talking together.
All right. And what about video integration unit cameras, VIC cameras? Who decides where those will be placed?
Same thing. I think it's a joint collaboration between City Hall and the Atlanta Police Department.
All right. Do you obtain knowledge about whether license plate readers caught any particular information in the same way or different than you get information about VIC cameras? Or to ask a better question, how do you learn whether or not there are license plate readers that may have captured something you need in your investigation?
Once again, we'll call and see.
Sustained.
Your Honor, how do you know where the license plate readers are that might have captured something of interest in your investigation?
We call the unit and they'll tell us if they have a license plate reader in the immediate area, and they'll tell us exactly where it's positioned and what direction it's facing.
All right. Would you describe for the jury where the Summer Hill community is located?
It's located off of Rev. David Abernathy at McDaniel Glen area.
Okay.
Down where the old Fulton County Turner Field used to be.
Okay. How much time have you spent working in that area?
I would say majority of the whole entire my career, 30 years.
Okay. Are you familiar with the Castleberry Hills area of Atlanta?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And how often have you worked in that area?
Per my patrol as a raid dog officer and responding as a burglary detective, robbery detective, and homicide detective.
330 McDaniel Street. What area is that in?
That is the zone 1, zone 5 area. This is like a border.
Okay. And when you say border, is it a border between different communities?
No, it's a border between the zones.
Okay. What communities make up that area?
It's both residential, apartment buildings, businesses.
And is 330 McDaniel Street in Fulton County?
Yes, it is, ma'am.
Did you have an occasion to respond to that location on January 10th, 2015?
Yes, ma'am.
What time, if you recall, did you respond?
I believe I received the call around 9:30 p.m. from Detective Darren Smith of the Atlanta Police Homicide Unit. He advised me that there were 3 subjects shot at that location.
Are you called only when there is a confirmed death? Or are you called before you know whether or not someone has died?
It depends on the status of the paramedics or they transport. If they say the person is low critical, we respond because there's a good chance that they might not survive once they get down to Grady.
When you responded on January 10th, 2015, did you have any confirmed deaths?
Not until I arrived on the scene.
What information or what were you responding to?
I responded to 3 subjects that were shot. One is low critical, one is in critical condition, one is in critical but stable condition.
And would you tell the jury what the names of those three subjects were?
Yes, ma'am. The first subject that was in critical condition was Donovan Thomas.
Mhm.
And I want to make sure I pronounce their names right. You mind if I look at my notes?
No, and
Okay.
if you, I'll hand you a copy of your report.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Second subject that was in critical condition was Reginald Hendricks, and the third that was in critical but stable was Cardarius Sanders.
Now, did you have an opportunity when you arrived on scene to speak with either of those three people?
No, ma'am, they was already transported to Grady.
All right. When you arrived on scene, had the scene already been cordoned off or roped off?
Yes, ma'am.
And when you arrived on scene, was there any other homicide detective already there assisting or directing?
Yes, ma'am. Detective Smith was on scene.
Now, was Detective Smith up in the rotation or was
No,
it
ma'am.
yours?
No, ma'am.
So when a detective is not up in rotation, how is it that one homicide detective would be working a scene before you, if it's your homicide?
Yes, ma'am. That depending on how many subjects, how many detectives are working that day. There's a lead detective that would go out to the scene, gather the information, start processing, and they'll notify the next up homicide detective that there's a call and there's three subjects. Like on this day, 3 subjects that were shot.
How familiar with you were the area of 330 McDaniel Street before you got that call on January 10th, 2015?
Very familiar.
Had you ever interacted with persons in that area on a casual basis as opposed to during an investigation?
Yes, ma'am. Doing an investigation.
And when you say during an investigation, is it only during investigations that you interacted with persons in that area?
Yes, ma'am. Just about. Yes, ma'am.
Were there or was there an apartment complex in that area?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you remember the name of the apartment complex?
Not off the top of my head, no. I believe that one across the street, down the street was Castleberry Apartments.
Okay. Were you familiar with or had you had any occasion to visit or be familiar with Castleberry Hills Apartments?
Yes, ma'am.
When you got on scene, did you make any efforts to locate surveillance footage?
Yes, ma'am.
Tell the jury what efforts you took to locate surveillance footage.
Immediately that caught my attention was there was cameras fixed on the barbershop at 330 McDaniel Street. Also, I noticed that there were surveillance cameras down at the gas station at the intersection of McDaniel Street and Northside Drive.
Was it daytime, nighttime, something in the middle when you arrived on scene? I did not ask that question. No.
We know, yeah, we know the time, so.
Let me ask a better question. Was there daylight, moonlight, was there natural light for you to see on scene when you arrived there?
No, the street was lit up with city lights.
Okay. And how were you able to see the cameras that you were able to identify?
They were just fixed on the building, so you can look up and see the cameras.
At the time that you saw them, did you know whether or not they were working?
No, I did not.
Did you take steps to find out?
Yes, I talked to the owners.
All right. And when that happens, are you able to get the camera footage on scene immediately, or do you do something to get that footage?
Yes, ma'am. I contact the cyber crimes unit, who goes out and retrieve all type of video surveillance for us.
Detective Teague, are you familiar with Detective Teague?
Yes, ma'am.
And what does Detective Teague do for you during your investigation?
Detective T went to those different locations and downloaded the video surveillance from those locations. I gave him the dates and the times.
Okay. Did you, at the time, know whether there were, or did you learn if there were any surveillance cameras at the apartments across the street from 330 McDaniel Street?
As I walked over there the next day, I saw that there was no cameras facing McDaniel Street.
And what other efforts, if any, did you take to get surveillance footage or any kind of captured footage of what happened at 330 McDaniel Street?
It was just those two locations that had cameras.
Okay. When you said that you went to the Texaco, where were you focusing? Where was it that you understood the shooting to have occurred?
The shooting happened right in front of the barbershop. The vehicle was traveling down McDaniel Street to Northside Drive and made a right onto Northside Drive. And that would place it right in the path of the Texaco cameras.
How did you learn what the vehicle did without saying anything that anyone specific told you? How did you learn?
People that was on the scene.
Okay. And at the time, on scene, the night of January 10, 2015, did you get any specific details about the make and model of the car? Any definitive details?
No, ma'am, except that it was probably a silver or a light gray colored vehicle.
Okay. When the Atlanta Police Department investigates a homicide, do they have ways of soliciting information from the public that might assist in the investigation?
Yes, we have what is called the Crime Stoppers hotline. Information given that leads to a portion of the investigation or successful arrest of the investigation. There's a $2,000 reward for any information given.
And where do you display that? Do you put it on TV? Do you put it in newspapers or something else?
It is displayed on TV, and also we post flyers around the neighborhood.
Did you do this with the McDaniel Street murder that you investigated?
Yes, ma'am.
What was it that you put on TV?
Basically, there was a subject that came inside with an assault rifle. When I identified who that person was, because they were not on scene when I got there.
Now, when you say a subject that came inside with an assault rifle, inside where?
The barbershop, I'm sorry, the barbershop.
And why did you put that particular footage on?
Because I want to see what this person was a person of interest that may be related to the shooting itself, that he may have been one of the shooters.
Did you later learn whether that person had any relationship to either of the victims?
Yes.
And what did you learn that person's relationship was to either of the victims?
I learned through the parent that was their son and the brother of the decedent.
Other than the footage of the person going into the barbershop, did you have any other footage displayed on television to try and help in your investigation?
I believe we just closed captioned the screen of the vehicle coming by. We didn't show the actual shooting itself, just the vehicle.
And when you say closed caption the screen, did you do a still shot or did you play a portion of a video surveillance?
Yes, what we did, we condensed it down so that the shot would just show that's the vehicle coming down the street. And we had a couple of still shots in there of the vehicle, but we never showed the victims getting shot themselves.
And did you show footage from the barbershop or the Texaco?
The barbershop.
Did you ever display any footage from the Texaco on TV?
No, ma'am.
All right. How do you decide which footage you're going to put out there and which footage you're going to hold back?
Based on the relevance, because the Texaco did not show the actual shooting itself. The barbershop did.
To your knowledge, did you all get Crime Stoppers calls or people calling in after you put up the video from in front of the barbershop?
Yes, ma'am.
When you arrived on scene, were there people who were willing to talk with you and have their names listed as witnesses?
There are people willing to talk, but they don't want to list their names.
And how did they make that known to you?
Simply by giving me the information, and I said, "You want to come down and talk to me?" And they're like, "No, that's all. As far as I'm getting involved, this is what This is who was involved.
Are you able to force people to get involved more when you're conducting crime scene investigations?
No, ma'am.
Are you not able to take people down to the police station if they tell you that they have some information?
We can ask them for their consent. If they say no and we force them down, that's called kidnapping.
Okay. All right. Did you have any persons that you were able to talk to, but you were able to also list out their names?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you remember who those people were?
One person in particular was a person by the name of Spencer Wright.
Now, let me ask you this. Was at the time you went to 330 McDaniel Street on January 10th, 2015, did you see a Spencer Wright on scene?
No, ma'am.
Did you talk with a Spencer Wright on scene?
No, ma'am.
How long after January 10th, 2015, did you talk with Spencer Wright without saying anything Spencer Wright said?
Probably around the month of October 2015, maybe.
And was there anyone with you when you learned of Spencer Wright?
Yes.
Right. Who?
Detective Gaither of the Gangs Unit.
When you first began your investigation into Donovan Thomas Jr.'s murder, was it a joint investigation with the gang unit, or did you do something to have them become involved?
It was a joint investigation. They were providing me with information and intel dealing, stemming from their investigations on gang-related activities. And what they deemed may be relevant for my investigation, they passed it on to me.
Did you delegate any duties to members of the gang unit to aid you in your investigation?
Some just...
Or better yet, did they offer up assistance?
Yes, ma'am.
Who within the gang unit offered up assistance in your investigation into the Donovan Thomas murder?
Detective Gaither and Detective Dennis.
Did you gain information that allowed you to interview people in relation to the homicide without saying any information that you gained? Just yes or no, did you get information?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you conduct interviews?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Now, the night of the homicide, did you direct anyone to reach out to you?
Yes, ma'am.
And who did you direct to reach out to you?
Kenneth Copeland.
How did you reach out, or how did you direct Kenneth Copeland to reach out to you?
Upon returning to the homicide office so I can start my investigation, I got alerted by the Zone 3 Morning Watch Mobile Patrol of a shooting that just happened on Van Ira.
Mm-hmm.
And from what the officers gathered was that this was...
Sustained.
Okay.
We won't talk with
Okay.
you about the officers on Van Ira
Okay.
and what they said.
Okay, ma'am.
But were you able to determine whose residence or what was on Van Ira at that location that the officer told you about?
Yes, it was Kenneth Copeland's baby mother's house.
All right. And how did that cause you? Why was that of interest? And to ask a better question, what did you do after you spoke with the officer about the shooting on Van Ira?
At that time, I went out to the scene myself.
Okay. Did you speak with anybody on scene at Van Ira?
Yes.
Who did you speak with without saying what they said?
I believe her last name was, now I look at the notes.
Nope, I don't mind at all.
I don't want to mess up her last name. Quartermain.
Okay.
Deshaun.
Deshaun Quarterman?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And did you speak with anyone else?
I spoke with Kenneth Copeland over her phone, over her cell phone.
All right. What did you see at Van Ira that caused you to be interested in talking to Kenneth Copeland? What did you see?
There were assault style rounds, spent shell casings in the middle of the street.
Now, were you able to see what type of shell casings, if any, were on scene at 330 McDaniel Street?
Yes, ma'am.
And what type, if you recall, did you observe on scene at 330 McDaniel Street?
At 330 McDaniel Street, there were 7.62 assault rifle rounds. There were 45 caliber rounds and 9mm caliber rounds.
How familiar are you with firearms?
Very familiar.
And what training have you received in firearms over your career, not only as a law enforcement officer, but in the military?
Extensive.
Tell the jury what kind of training.
Basically, the uses of the weapon, the safety of the weapon, and what particular weapon is able to fire what kind of round.
All right. Have you had occasion to fire those type of weapons that you saw shell casings for on scene at 330?
Yes, ma'am.
What you saw on Van Ira, were they similar type rounds? Not necessarily caliber, were they similar or different?
They were assault rifle rounds, so they similar but not similar.
Okay. And when you say similar but not similar, could you explain a little bit more?
Okay. The 7.62 rounds that was recovered from 330 McDaniel Street are typically fired from AK-47 assault rifle. Any rifle built off that schematic. The rounds that we recovered from Van Ira was rounds that is associated with the AR-15
Okay.
assault rifle.
Do you recall how many rounds you observed at Van Ira?
I want to say possibly 10 to 12, or 10 to 15, something like that.
Did you observe any damage to any structures or property at Van Ira?
Yes, there were some defects to the residence.
Were there any people shot at Van Ira?
No, ma'am.
Were there people at home at the time that the residence was shot up or something different?
Yes, ma'am.
How long did you stay on scene at 330 McDaniel Street from when you first arrived?
I believe I arrived probably about 4, maybe 5 hours.
Okay. So approximately what time did you leave?
I left probably around 1:30 a.m.
And what time would you say that you went to check out Van Ira?
Probably about, the call came in, I want to say probably around 1:40, 1:45 a.m.
And where were you when that call came in? Had you made it back to police headquarters or were
Yes,
you
ma'am.
still on scene?
I made it back to police headquarters.
And how long did it take you to get to Van Ira after you got that call?
Probably about 10 minutes.
Did Deshaun Quarterman offer to have you speak with Mr. Copeland, or did you ask her to call Mr. Copeland?
I asked her to call Mr. Copeland.
Did she tell you her relationship to him before you asked her to call him?
Yes, ma'am.
And were you able to get his phone number from her or any information like that?
No, ma'am.
How long did you speak with Mr. Copeland?
Roughly about maybe 3 minutes, just to let him know that he needs to come down to the office and talk to me.
Did he come down to the office and talk to you?
Yes, he did.
Do you have any idea how long after you asked him to come down and talk to you that he actually arrived at the police station?
I want to say probably between 20 to 30 minutes.
When he came to the police station, do you recall, did you meet him in an interview room at the police station?
No, actually, I met him.
Oh,
No.
go ahead, I'm sorry.
I met him in the rear of the police headquarters.
Okay.
I was standing by with his brother, waiting for him to get there.
Who is his brother?
I forgot his brother's name. I don't recall his brother's name.
Are you familiar with anyone by the name of Rontrez Brock?
Yes,
Do you remember whether that was the brother or?
yes, Rontrez Brock was the brother.
Now, how is it that you came to be standing there with Rontrez Brock?
Because he got word that people was coming after his brother.
When you met with Mr. Copeland and his brother behind the police department. Was that something usual that you do? Like, why do you meet behind the police department as opposed to?
It was easier parking for them.
Okay.
Instead of having to park and walk all the way up, I just said, meet me here. I can get your brother in, get him upstairs and talk to him.
And did you get Mr. Copeland in and upstairs to talk to him?
Yes, I did.
Now, when you first saw Mr. Copeland, do you remember what his demeanor was like? Whether he was sad, happy, excitable, based on what you could observe and see? Or something wholly different?
It was something totally different. He was even killed, and he just kept asking, he don't know why people putting him in this.
Okay. Did you tell him that he had to come upstairs and talk with you?
No, I didn't tell him he had to come upstairs.
Did you have the ability at that time to force him, or would that have been another situation like kidnapping?
Yes, ma'am. There'd been another situation like kidnapping.
Okay. Did his brother come upstairs and talk with you?
His brother came up and stood by outside.
All right. Did anybody else join Mr. Copeland in that police station?
No, not that I recall.
Okay. Do you remember about how long you talked to Mr. Copeland in the police station?
I think maybe a couple of hours, an hour or two.
Did you talk to him inside an interview room, outside an interview room, or both?
Inside the interview room.
Did you start any conversations before you got to the interview room?
No, just basically that his name had come up in the investigation.
Okay. Now, when you have people that you want to talk to, are these interview rooms always equipped with recording devices, video and sound?
Yes, ma'am.
Are they running constantly, or do you turn them on before you take someone inside?
You turn them on and you log it in to our database up under your particular case number.
Okay. And when you began talking with Mr. Copeland, did you read him any Miranda rights or just start?
No, ma'am, because he was not under arrest, so it was a non-custodial interview. So there's no need for me to Mirandize him. We just started conducting the formal interview with him.
When you began conducting the interview with Mr. Copeland, did you have any particular target in mind that you wanted to have him implicate?
No, ma'am, no particular target.
And as you interviewed him, did you attempt to get him to tell you somebody did any particular thing?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And were you telling him the people that you wanted him to talk about, or were you asking him for information or something in the middle?
Yeah, I was asking for information, and pretty much the question was always in the middle.
Okay. When you began talking with Mr. Copeland, did you have knowledge about any people that you wanted him to give you information on?
No, ma'am.
All right. And during the course of your conversation with Kenneth Copeland, did you get information that led you to other people you were interested in talking to?
On that initial night, no.
Yeah. And was there any particular concern that you understood Mr. Copeland to have that night?
Other than he spoke about an altercation.
And when he spoke about an altercation, did you say anything to suggest to him that you knew about the altercation?
Somewhat, yes, ma'am.
Now, did Mr. Copeland's, did he ask you questions during the interview?
I think just general questions like, how did my name come up in this? Once again, I don't know why.
Did he try to get you to help him in any way in terms of ensuring his safety?
Yes, ma'am. He wanted me to speak with the family of Donovan Thomas, let them know that he had nothing to do with it and stop coming after him.
Okay. Now, did he know, or did you tell him that it was these people coming after him? Or was he just speculating, to your knowledge?
He was just speculating.
Okay. Did you give him any assurances about what you would do to try and ensure his safety?
Yes, ma'am. I told him I would speak with the family and let them know that at this point in time, he is not a person of interest or suspect.
And when you gave him that assurance, when you told him that, did you have any information that anybody in Donovan Thomas's family was involved in shooting at Kenneth Copeland or his family?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
No information.
At the time that you told Kenneth Copeland that, had you spoken with any member of Donovan Thomas's family?
Not at that time.
Did you at any point go to the hospital where Donovan Thomas was taken?
Yes, ma'am.
When?
The next day. Well, the morning of the next day.
11?
Yes, ma'am, the 11th, the morning of the 11th.
How long after you spoke with Kenneth Copeland did you go to the hospital?
I want to say about close to midday. About close to afternoon, because I went and spoke to the other two surviving victims.
Okay. Without saying what they said, were they able to communicate with you at the time that you talked with them?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And let's start with Mr. Sanders. Without saying what he said, was he willing to talk to you?
Yes, ma'am.
And did he offer up any information about who it was that committed the shooting?
No, ma'am.
And what about Mr. Reginald Hendricks?
Yes, ma'am. He's willing to talk.
Do you remember how long you talked to each one of them?
Because they were down at Grady, I made sure I didn't do an extensive, interview with them. So I had to say probably about 20 minutes apiece, no more than 20 minutes.
Were either of them under arrest at the time you spoke with them?
No, ma'am.
Did you do anything like read Miranda rights or anything like that?
No, ma'am.
Were there people in the room with Cordarius Sanders when you talked with him?
Yes, ma'am.
Who was in the room?
His mother.
Did his mother communicate with you without saying what she said? Did his mother give you any information that helped you in your investigation?
No, ma'am.
Was his mother the only person in the room with him?
That I recall, yes, ma'am, that I spoke with.
Do you remember how old Cordarius Sanders was at the time?
I want to say maybe he was 14, something like that, 14, 15. He was a juvenile.
All right. And what about Mr. Hendricks? Was there anyone in the room with him when you spoke with him?
I don't recall anyone else in the room with him.
Okay. Do you remember about how old he was when you talked to him? Was he older than
Yes.
Mr. Sanders?
Yes, way older.
And was he able to give you any information about who committed the shooting?
No, ma'am.
Was he able to describe whether there was any acts of aggression that he saw that could have prompted the shooting?
No, ma'am.
By the time you talked to Mr. Sanders and Mr. Hendricks, had you had a chance to look at the surveillance video from either the barbershop or the Texaco?
No, ma'am, not at that time.
Okay. Do you remember when the first time it was that you had a chance to look at the barbershop video?
I probably want to say probably later on that evening.
Okay. And what about the Texaco footage?
The next day.
Now, as you're looking at the barbershop footage, did you personally recognize anybody that you saw displayed, faces of anybody that you saw out there?
No, ma'am.
What about the Texaco footage? Did you see anybody you personally recognize in the Texaco footage?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Okay. And I mean when you first saw it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did you, in releasing the information you released to the public, did you ever release a make and model of a car, to your knowledge?
No, ma'am.
All right. When you spoke with Mr. Copeland, did you ask him about being involved in any kind of accident?
Yes, ma'am.
Without talking about what anyone else said, do you know why you asked him about being involved in an accident?
Yes, ma'am, because I started a deep dive investigation on his name
Uh-huh.
and put them to the APD, Atlanta Police Database. And I was able to suss out several reports
Mhm.
of him connected to being in an accident or traffic stops.
Okay. And were your questions based on whatever vehicle you saw reflected in that report, or
Yes,
something
ma'am.
different?
What was reflected on people's description of people was given of the vehicle.
The incidents that you saw within the database, were they incidents that had occurred in 2015, January 2015, or earlier, 2014? Around what time frame?
I think there was time frames of 2012 to 2014.
Okay. Did you have the same kind of familiarity with Kenneth Copeland as a child that you did with Mr. Zachary?
No, ma'am.
When, if you recall, was the first time you knew about Kenneth Copeland? Like how old was, like around what year?
2015, the year of the incident.
Okay. Other than what you learned as you began investigating the murder of Donovan Thomas, did you have any other knowledge about Kenneth Copeland?
No, ma'am.
Did you ensure or did you offer to do anything else to, or offer any advice to Kenneth Copeland to help him secure the safety of his family? Did you make any suggestions?
I think probably general
Okay.
suggestion of that nature.
All right. Did Kenneth Copeland have any cell phones or anything with him that you saw when you first talked to him on January the 11th?
I didn't see him with a cell phone.
Okay. Now, do you remember Mr. Copeland offering you, and let me ask you this, the interview with Kenneth Copeland, it was recorded, right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Now, when was the last time you could remember looking at that interview? Like, did I show it to you today?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And do you remember everything about that interview? Everything?
Not everything in detail.
Okay. Like the kind of clothing Kenneth Copeland was wearing. Do you remember that?
I couldn't remember. I think it was dark clothing.
Okay. All right. Did Kenneth Copeland offer to give you any information that might help you sort of determine that he should not be a target of any retaliatory shootings?
Yes.
All right. Did you follow up on the information that he gave you?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you tell the jury the ways that you followed up on whatever Kenneth Copeland told you?
Yes. The information I got from Kenneth Copeland, I immediately went to Detective Dennis and Detective Gaither to see if they knew about this information. They knew about it. They gave me details on it. He was able to find that they had already started an investigation themselves into it, I believe.
Before. Your Honor, he's not.
The very last comment.
Well, Your Honor, I would say that it is offered as a explanation for his investigation and why it is that he took certain steps. So, and also that the jury has heard from these witnesses as well.
Go ahead with your next question.
Okay. Before you got the information from Mr. Copeland that you went to investigators Dennis and Gaither about, did you personally know about any of that?
Not personally, no.
Had you had any involvement with any persons that you knew called themselves YSL in any capacity?
No, ma'am.
Had you had any, did you have any knowledge about what YSL was before you talked to Kenneth Copeland?
Say that question again, ma'am.
Did you know about YSL at all before January 10th, 2015?
Overruled.
Yes,
All right. Now, was the knowledge that you had of YSL, was it gained from your investigation, your time with it as a detective, or something else?
my time as a detective and my time of working in the school system.
Now, when you say your time working in the school system, about what year would you say you first heard about YSL?
I would say probably about maybe 2012, 2013.
Okay.
That's
about the first year that you heard of it?
yes.
Okay.
And
Did you conduct any investigations yourself into any group called YSL during that time?
no, ma'am.
Did you speak with, without saying what they said, did you speak with any students about a group called YSL?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know how many students you talked to?
All right, a total of 8 students.
How many?
8 students.
And were you on school property, or was this outside school, at the house, or some other place?
School property.
Okay. Were there any particular incidents that led to your speaking to these students about YSL?
Just I heard the name constantly coming up.
And was it you asking particular students, or particular students just coming up to you?
Just actually certain students I was very aware of and had a trust relationship with.
That you had a trust relationship with?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, was Quindarius Zachary one of the people you talked to about YSL or not?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Do you remember the names of the students that you talked to about YSL?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Do you remember the relative ages of the students?
Yes, ma'am.
About how old?
14.
Okay. And did you, during the time as a resource officer, did you personally observe any things that were being used to identify people as YSL?
No.
Okay. Other than the name YSL, when you were a school resource officer, did you have any other information or knowledge about YSL?
About the name YSL, had no other information other than their previous names.
What do you mean the previous names?
The name went from the Red Cartel to the Rock Crew, which stood for Raised on Cleveland. Then it went over to YSL.
All right. Is this information that you learned, how did you learn this information that you just talked about?
Talking to the kids and work in the neighborhood.
All right. Did you ever speak with grownups, the family, the parents of the kids about YSL or these other groups, Red Cartel or Rock Crew, without saying what they said?
Yes, I did.
All right.
Overruled.
Did you ever arrest anybody during that time just for being affiliated with Red Cartel, Rock Crew, or YSL?
No, ma'am.
Did you conduct any investigations that involved either of those groups, even after you learned about their existence from the students, but before January 10th, 2015?
As in the YSL name itself or the previous names?
Either.
Yes.
All right. How many investigations?
Probably total myself, probably a total of maybe 4 or 5.
What type of what type of incidents? Forms his basis for his knowledge of other questions that he will be asked.
Overruled.
What type of incidents were you investigating that you spoke to the jury about just now?
About aggravated assaults and homicides.
How many homicides?
Probably about 2.
Do you remember in particular the persons that were involved in the 2 homicides, victim and suspects? Your Honor, we